Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to our class on tefillah, on prayer. Although we can continue on the Shema for really many more weeks, but I think this is the fourth week that we've been focused on the Shema. That maybe, well, let's see. I don't want to make any promises, but I'd like to move on. I'd like to move past the Shema, but this week certainly will be on the Shema, and then we'll. There's certainly a lot more to get to. Today I want to share a few ideas, some of which are on. I gotta give credit. The Chabad.org has a new davening website, which really goes through the tefillos, goes through the prayers in great depth. So I encourage you to check that out. Chabad.org, prayer with commentary, the online siddur with commentary. So a lot of what we're going to say today comes from there. But I do want to, before I get to that, I'd like to go back to something we started last week. Last week, we spoke about the commentaries. We spoke of the commentary of the Rambam. We spoke about the commentary of the I forget, there was someone else. But the third commentary that we spoke about last week, the third of the Rishonim we spoke about, who speaks of the Shema, the kavanah to have in the Shema, is the Rashba, of Shlomo ben Aderet. And I want to go back to that, firstly because I found it to be very profound and very practical about what one should be mindful of when reciting the Shema. And secondly, because I didn't finish it. So I want to go back to the Rashba. So I'll repeat what the Rashba says. And I apologize that I'm repeating what we learned already a couple of weeks ago, but it's worthwhile. And again, we'll complete the Rashba's commentary today. So again, the Rashba was posed with a question. And his question was, in his tshuvas, so the Rashba has commentary on the Torah, on the Talmud, but here it was one of his tshuvas, one of his responsa. And the person asked, apparently, from the answer we could deduce that the person asked, Leva'ir lecha inyan parshas Kriyas Shema. Can you explain to me the idea behind the Shema prayer that we say every day? And as we've said many times, the Shema prayer is the only prayer that we say throughout the day, which is a Torah obligation to say. Morning and night, morning and evening. So he responds. And he says, and again, he said that I'm not here, says the Rashba, I'm not here to respond to you with very deep, profound ideas, but rather just to tell you the basics. And that is that the section of the Shema is the section which teaches us the idea of yichud and emunah, which means the oneness of God and faith in God. And while there are very, very deep ideas upon which the entire house of Israel is based upon them, I'd like to give you the meditations on the basics, the basic meditation for the Shema. And that is, firstly, a person should not read the Shema with a sense of, well, I just have to check this off, that I have to read the Shema because this is an obligation I have to do. I have an obligation to read this, so I'll read this. That's first of all, one should not read the Shema that way. Rather, a person has to be mechaven, a person has to concentrate, first and foremost, that God is one. There's one God. And that one God, that's what we say, Hashem Echad, one God. And that God is Elokeinu, that is our God. That I have a relationship with that God. And then he says, and I'll read his words, Chayavim limsar nafshenu v'ta'avaseinu v'chol ma'odeinu l'shmo yisbarach, which means we are obligated to give our lives and our desires and all of our being, or all of our wealth to Hashem. In other words, we have to be ready to sacrifice everything for Hashem. Often we talk about sacrifice, self-sacrifice. So it's a big word, self-sacrifice. Avram Avinu had self-sacrifice. But am I ready to give up my pleasure for Hashem? Am I ready to give up my wealth for Hashem? And all that is part of the Shema. All that is part of that first, the meditation one should have when reciting the Shema, and perhaps the first line of the Shema. That certainly connects also to the Ahavta, the next few lines. and that we are saying this, we are completely in tune with this, not just by the words of our lips, but rather with a genuine sense. Furthermore, we should accept this idea, not with worry, and not as we are bound, or that we are doing this out of fear, or doing this because God is in control of us and therefore we don't have any choice, but we have to commit ourselves in this way. Rather, rather, like with love and with desire, I desire to connect to and access the will of my Creator. It should come from a place of love. This is all part of the meditation one has to have in the Shema. And then he continues, and this is somewhat repetitive. He says it should not be something, our emunah, our faith in God should not be mitzvahs anashim ilumada, not should be something that just, it's the routine. That's one of the challenges, that when we say the Shema so often, the challenge is it could become a something which seems to be routine, just something that we're doing out of, because that's what we, it just becomes second nature to us. He says, make sure never to make the Shema second nature. Mm-hmm. Rather, we have to guard it and think about the Shema every time we say it. Certainly every day we should try to take a moment to really say the Shema with proper intensity. I once remember, maybe I've shared this before, I had at my Shabbos table a young lady who had a very interesting job. Her job was, it was a legal job. She represented deaf people in court. And there are challenges. You represent a deaf person to be able to create the proper communication that they understand, and both directions, to be able to provide proper representation. Anyway, she said one of the areas that she had been working on as almost a fascinating side pursuit was the developing a proper sign language for the prayers. Yeah, what are the sign language for prayers, or for Jewish ideas, including prayers? So during the course of the conversation, one of the things she spoke about was the Shema, and she said, the Shema. What is the sign language for Shema? So you think of the Shema. So you assume. She said, what's the sign language for the word Shema? So you assume Shema means listen. What would you assume is the sign language for that? This, right? She said no. For whatever reason, I don't think this was her decision. She said for whatever reason, when they were coming up with the sign language for the Shema, they felt that the proper sign for Shema was this. Why? Because this indicates concentrate and focus. This is a very external appreciation of the Shema. To listen, all right, listen. This is more accurate. I was very impressed because it's more accurate. The Shema is to focus, to really tap into something, which is why we cover our eyes by the Shema. We cover our eyes, even though all of davening requires concentration. But there's this idea that the moment of the Shema is a moment of intense concentration, which is what the Rashba is trying to tell us. There's so many ideas that you need to tune into. You can't just be casual. Can't just be by rote. You have to really zoom in. Zoom into the idea of faith, the idea of joy, the idea of self-sacrifice. So really, this is correct. When you think of the Shema, this is more correct than this. But anyways, he goes on to say, the word Shema Yisrael. Let's talk about the word Shema for a moment. He says the word Shema includes three ideas. The word Shema includes three ideas. What are the three ideas that the word Shema includes? The first is Shmias Oizen, which means literally to listen. Oizen Shama Vatashrini. Oizen, that we have to listen. That you have to listen. The first idea of the Shema is the idea of listening to an idea. Listening to an idea. The second idea of the Shema is, he says, Kavanas Halev. Kavanas Halev, which means the Kavana is the intent of the heart. That's different than listening. Intent of the heart, the concentration of the heart. When the heart concentrates on something. We'll elaborate further in a moment. The third thing he says is that Shema also means accepting. Accepting something. As he quotes in the Pasuk in Mishlei, Shema b'ni musar avicha. Listen, my son, to the musar. What do you call musar? Musar is loosely translated as rebuke.
Yeah.
But it's not really a rebuke. It's really that which is given over, that which the ideas and the messaging. I pass on something to you. That which your parent passes on. Discipline. Discipline is a part of it, yes. But it's really, Musa really means that which is given over.
What did you do wrong? You did right.
Masoret. Anyways, so this Shema b'ni, listen, is that you try to accept. So you have listening, you have concentrating, and then you have acceptance. All of those are in the word Shema. And he says it's not just three random things, rather it's in order. Those three are all accomplished, one in order of the other. How's that? Yeah. He says the first thing is to listen. Shema, listen. If you don't listen, you have nothing to concentrate on, you have nothing to accept. If you don't listen to an idea that's being shared, you can't focus on it, you can't accept it, you can't do anything. And as simple as that sounds, sometimes it's not so simple. There are people, maybe even ourselves, we have a hard time listening. We get these, especially as we get on in life and we know more. So sometimes we feel like I know everything I need to know. I'm already in the teaching mode, so I don't need to listen. So the first point is no. Always be ready to listen. Shema, be ready to listen and hear new ideas and hear new ways to connect to Hashem and to follow Hashem's ways. But that's not enough. That's Shema number one. The second idea contained within the word of the Shema is now that you've heard. Now you can move from listening to really in-depth focusing. You heard an idea, now you have to stop and focus an idea. Because when you hear an idea, that's not enough. You want to make it part of you. So now you have to internalize the idea, which is to think about it, meditate upon it, concentrate upon it. There's so much of this in Hasidic teaching. The idea of meditation, the idea that you heard, now become one with that idea. Become one with that idea through focus and through concentration. Mm-hmm. And then you become one. So the idea that you heard, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Echad, there's one God, and Ve'ahavta Hashem Elokecha, these are all very profound ideas, but you could just say it and listen to it, but if you don't focus on it and meditate upon it, it won't become one with you, won't become part of your reality. Won't become part of your reality. You want to be part of your reality. The belief in one God, the love of Hashem should be part of your reality that happens through intense meditation and concentration, an idea that you listen to. And finally, once you have those two steps, then you could move on to step number 3, which is if I've heard this idea and I internalize this idea, now for sure I'm going to listen to this. Now I'm going to allow it. And when I say now, it's going to become now the third idea, which we said is to accept. I'm going to accept those ideas as part of my life and accept them in a way that it leads to how I behave. Once I listen to it, I meditate upon it, which means I've come to really connect to its truth. So now I know my behavior has to be according to that. My behavior has to be in accordance with that. A person's behavior has to be in accordance with their faith in Hashem. And when a person has internalized faith in Hashem in a very real way, their behavior is different. Their behavior is different. You do business differently when you have true faith in Hashem, because Hashem is providing. You act differently towards others when you have faith in Hashem, because Hashem is watching. You have all sorts of, every part of your behavior is different once you internalize the ideas of Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. So this is perhaps we shared a lot of ideas, but one of the ideas that we can probably remember every day is the three-step Shema. Shema of hearing, Shema of focusing, and Shema of accepting. And all those are contained within the word Shema, because we see in Torah, the word Shema could be one or the other, and those are 3 steps in one's acceptance of Hashem and internalizing it in one's daily living. This is why I thought I was going to get to the Chabad.org ideas today. So far, I have not. This is why we have a very interesting halacha. So if a person, there is this idea that one, in order to say the Shema, you have to cover your eyes, right? Which means, even though one is supposed to have kavanah and intensity throughout all of davening, supposed to have proper kavanah for all of davening, but for the Shema, you have to have extra kavanah. Now, practically speaking, most ideally one should be in shul, and therefore you davening, you have ability to concentrate on all of davening. But the Gemara talks about a person who's traveling, and they have to say the Shema. So the Gemara says you have to pause. You have to pause your travels and recite the Shema.
If you're on a boat.
So if you're on a boat, I don't believe the Gemara is talking about that, because you're on a boat, you're not distracted by the travels. I think it's more so talking about when you're riding on a horse or a car.
Oh, really?
I mean, think about it. If you're driving, if you're the passenger, but if you're the driver, you can't really, or at least you shouldn't really be focusing intensely on anything else other than driving. And the same as if you're riding a horse.
Like you're going somewhere in the car and you have a traveler's prayer. You have to stop for that.
You don't have to stop for the traveler's prayer, although many people do. That's ideally you should, for the same reason, because you should be able to focus.
Okay, got it.
But for the Shema, you are obligated to stop. So this is very practical. If you're driving in a car, you realize I haven't said the Shema yet this morning or this evening.
Okay.
You should pull over to the side and pause, because the Shema has to be recited with extra kavanah.
Okay.
The question, though, is how much of the Shema has to be recited while stopped? Today, by the way, it may not be a big deal. You pause, and you're anyways on the side of the road. But in the olden days, often people were traveling with a caravan. Part of safety was that you didn't travel alone. So to stop wasn't necessarily simple, because you're asking the whole caravan to stop. Or if you're stopping and they're not stopping, you're falling behind. So what is the obligation of how long do you have to stop for? So the Gemara gives several ideas. The Gemara gives several answers to that question. According to Rav Nassim, you have to pause and stop while you say Shema until the words Al Levavecha. Once you got to those words, then you can get back on the road. Rabbi Yochanan says, no, the entire first chapter until Uvisha Arecha. That's how long you have to pause for. Different opinions. What is the halacha? How long do you have to stop for when you're traveling and reciting the Shema? So the halacha, if you look in the Shulchan Aruch, is that halacha does not follow Rabbi Nassim, who says you go until Al Levavecha, and it does not follow the opinion of Yochanan, the entire first chapter of the Shema. Rather, the halacha is you have to pause or you have to stop just for the recitation of the first line, just for Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. That is the halacha. That's all you have to stop for. Now, again, ideally, you should stop for the whole Shema. But if you want to know what the absolute minimum is, it's just that first line of the Shema. And the reason is because of what we've been saying. The reason is because the Shema encapsulates everything. So even though all of davening should be, but once a person said that first line of the Shema with the proper intensity of what we just said, like the 3 levels of the Shema, then one can perhaps continue, not ideally, but a person can continue the rest of the davening without the same level of concentration, because at the very least, they've really internalized the message of the Shema, and once you do that, you have the foundation secure for the rest of Yiddishkeit and for the rest of the prayers, which is why the rest can be done perhaps in some state of distraction, although not ideal. So with this, I guess we conclude the messaging of the Rashba. We shared that, I shared that we'll get to something else over here. So I want to share one more idea, or maybe a couple more ideas about the Shema. And that is that if you look in the Siddur, the Siddur right over here. If you look in the Siddur, the Shema, you'll notice on page 42, do you notice any large letters in the Shema as you're looking at the first line? Any letters are bigger than others?
Yeah.
Which ones?
Ayin.
The Ayin in the Shema and
the Dalet in
the Dalet in Echad.
Yeah.
Why are those bigger? Again, the Siddur, the Shema, so there's the Ayin is bigger and the Dalet is bigger, right?
Witness.
Why? Because the Ayin and the Dalet together spells the word aid, which means witness. What does a witness have to do with the Shema? And furthermore, if we flip around the Ayin and the Dalet, you have another word. Ayin, Dalet is aid. Dalet, Ayin is da. which means da'at, which means to know.
Oh, das, knowledge, yeah.
Knowledge. Chachma bina das, the last letter of Chabad. Right, without das, you're just Chabad. So you have to, so therefore, so you have to have das. So what is the aid and what is the da and what is the connection to the Shema? So let's start with the aid. The aid, which means a witness. Our sages tell us that when we recite the Shema, and we recite it with proper intensity, and usually, by the way, the Shema is one of those lines which we say out loud. We are also becoming witnesses to the world, testifying to the world as to the reality of God's presence. Kabbalah talks about witnesses. Not only Kabbalah, Halacha, Chassidus talks about witnesses. Now, what is the concept, accomplishment of a witness? There's different types of witnesses in Jewish law, but one of the perhaps the most essential idea of a witness is that a witness reveals something that is otherwise not known. Right? When you call a witness to court, the idea is that there's something which is not known or not known clearly, and you have a witness who comes and says, I testify, I want to reveal this truth, which is otherwise not clearly known, and I am going to testify to that truth. As obviously Halacha points out, and this is obvious, something which is clearly known does not need witnesses. Something which is known to all. You don't need a witness to tell you that the sun rose this morning. You don't need a witness to tell you what time it is. You don't need a witness to tell you that which is known. So witness, by definition, a witness is there to share something which is not clearly known. So therefore, the Chassidus points out that the idea of testimony in the Shema, which is the aid of the Shema, is that we are there to testify to the divine presence, of the divine presence to the world. Who taught us this? Who taught us this more than anyone is Abraham. We read in the Torah portion yesterday that Vayikra Sham b'Shem Hashem Kel Olam, that Avraham and Sarah together understood that their role in this world was to bring an awareness of God to the world. They had an Eshel, they had a home, they had a hospitality center, they had a beautiful place which they invited people into, but they didn't suffice at simply feeding people and giving them a place to sleep. They used every opportunity that they had and the opportunities of kindness that they had to also bring an awareness of the presence of Hashem to each person, to make people aware of that which is otherwise not known. We live in a world, till today, that often is lacking an awareness of Hashem. And doesn't necessarily mean that people don't know of God's existence, but the Jewish understanding of God's existence is not known. The idea of God's hashgacha pratis, which means personal divine providence, is something people don't know. And when this may sound simple, but when someone asks you, how are you? And instead of just answering good, you say, good, thank God. What are you saying? You're saying that my goodness is not random. I know not if you want to stop with that person and have this conversation, but the point you're hopefully subtly conveying is that the goodness in my life is not random. It's not good because I worked hard. It's not good because the sun is shining brightly today. It's good because I have God to thank for that. That is the deeper idea behind good, thank God, or God bless, or bless God, or God willing. In each of those very simple interactions, one is conveying the presence of God, not just the existence of God, but the presence of God in life. And this is part of the aid. This is what it means to be a witness. A witness of God is not just to be a witness. In today's terminology, we think a witness is that you notice something. I was a witness to something. But no, that's just you saw something. Witness means you then testify. To be aware of something doesn't make you a witness. A witness means that you are then able to testify and reveal that reality to others. So the Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, when we announce it, when we say it out loud, we are becoming witnesses to the presence of God in this world. And that's why the Ayin and Dalet are large, because we are witnesses to God's presence in this world. All right, we'll stop here. Maybe next week we'll do one more on the Shema. We get to the Dalet, Ayin. Again, there's just an endless amount to talk about when it comes to the Shema.